Hello. Welcome. Welcome back to another rendition of the Bible Department Podcast. We are reading through the New Testament. We are in Galatians chapter 2. And if you want to follow along, or if you're wanting to read the Bible this year, you can do so at 5daybiblereading.com, where you can get their plan. You click on the top right corner. There's a little button that says get the 2025 plan. You click on that, and then you can download their thing. There is a paid version. Ignore that one. I mean, if you want to, you can get it. But this is not sponsored by 5-Day Bible Reading Plan or anything like that. I just found them one day while traversing the wild, wild web. And so you can get the 5-Day Bible Reading Plan. It's all free. And you can follow along and do all that fun stuff. So I hope you all had a wonderful day yesterday, and I hope you're looking forward to a wonderful day today. I'm Matt with So Cincy. We're here live streaming every weekday morning, Monday through Friday at 6:30 a.m., where we are just reading through the New Testament. This week we are in the book of Galatians, and today we're going to be in Galatians chapter 2. So we are just going to go right ahead and jump into it. Then, 14 years later, I went back to Jerusalem again, this time with Barnabas, and Titus came along too. I went there because God revealed to me that I should go. While I was there, I met privately with those considered to be leaders of the church and shared with them the message I had been preaching to the Gentiles. I wanted to make sure that we were in agreement for fear that all my efforts had been wasted and I was running the race for nothing. That's going to be important to know. We're going to come back to that. We're going to highlight that. And they supported me and did not even demand that my companion Titus be circumcised, though he was a Gentile. Even that question came up only because of some so-called believers there, false ones really, who were secretly brought in. They sneaked in to spy on us and take away the freedom we have in Christ Jesus. They wanted to enslave us and force us to follow their Jewish regulations, but we refused to give in to them for a single moment. We wanted to preserve the truth of the gospel message for you. And the leaders of the church had nothing to add to what I was preaching. By the way, their reputation as great leaders made no difference to me, for God has no favorites. Instead, they saw that God had given me the responsibility of preaching the gospel to the Gentiles, just as he had given Peter the responsibility of preaching to the Jews. For the same God who worked through Peter as the apostle to the Jews also worked through me as the apostle to the Gentiles. In fact, James, Peter, and John, who were known as pillars of the church, recognized the gift God had given me, and they accepted Barnabas and me as their co-workers. They encouraged us to keep preaching to the Gentiles while they continued their work with the Jews. Their only suggestion was that we keep on helping the poor, which I've always been eager to do. But when Peter came to Antioch, I had to oppose him to his face, for what he did was very wrong. When he first arrived, he ate with the Gentile believers who were not circumcised. But afterward, when some friends of James came, Peter wouldn't eat with the Gentiles anymore. He was afraid of criticism from these people who insisted on the necessity of circumcision. As a result, other Jewish believers followed Peter's hypocrisy, and even Barnabas was led astray by their hypocrisy. When I saw that they were not following the truth of the gospel message, I said to Peter in front of all the others, "Since you, a Jew by birth, have discarded the Jewish laws and are living like a Gentile, why are you now trying to make these Gentiles follow the Jewish traditions? You and I are Jews by birth, not sinners like the Gentiles. Yet we know that a person is made right with God by faith in Jesus Christ, not by obeying the law, as we have believed, and we have believed in Christ Jesus, so that we might be made right with God because of our faith in Christ. Not because we have obeyed the law, for no one will ever be made right with God by obeying the law. But suppose we seek to be made right with God through faith in Christ, and then we are found guilty because we have abandoned the law. Would that mean Christ has led us into sin? Absolutely not. Rather, I am a sinner if I rebuild the old system of law I already tore down. For when I tried to keep the law, it condemned me. So I died to the law. I stopped trying to meet all its requirements so that I might live for God. My old self has been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me. So I live in this earthly body by trusting in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. I do not treat the grace of God as meaningless, for if keeping the law could make us right with God, then there was no need for Christ to die. That is Galatians chapter 2. These scriptures, man, they are so encouraging. They really are. Okay. So, one thing I highlighted was something that was picked up in Galatians chapter 1. If you go back, watch yesterday's stream, or the past episode stream, I should say, just in case some of you are watching at another day. But if you look at Galatians 1 says in verse 6, I am shocked that you are turning away so soon from God, who called you himself through the loving mercy of Christ. You are following a different way that pretends to be the good news, but is not the good news at all. So Paul, the writer here, he is telling them, like, hey, you guys aren't following the truth. Like, someone got in here, someone persuaded you to follow a good news that adds to a false good news. And he re-ups this by saying, like, when I was getting ready to go to the Gentiles, I started preaching to them. This is what Jesus Christ revealed to me. That's in, I believe, Acts. There's the whole story of Saul, Paul. Paul and Saul is the same person. Saul is his Jewish name. Paul is his Gentile name. Jesus Christ revealed himself to there. Saul, why are you persecuting me? Why are you crushing my church? Yada, yada, yada. And so he trains, and Paul now goes out to the other Gentiles, and he's telling them, like, hey, this is the story. Well, he lets the Galatians know, because this is something they're struggling with, that they're following this false gospel, or this good news that's a little bit misconstrued. He says, I went there because God revealed to me that I should go. That's the Acts story. While I was there, I met privately with those considered to be the leaders of the church and shared with them the message I had been preaching to the Gentiles. I wanted to make sure that we were in agreement. So Paul even goes to the people who were directly with Jesus. Meanwhile, he was also with Jesus, but in a different sense. Paul just double checks. He's like, hey, this is what I've been preaching to these people over here. Am I leaving the stuff out? Am I right in this? You know, is there something else I'm missing? He fact checked himself, for lack of a better word. And the reason why is that for fear that all my efforts had been wasted and I was running the race for nothing. So he double checked to make sure that not only was he living the right way, this new life in Christ that we're going to talk about, but he wanted to make sure that the race he was running for nothing. It wasn't to, I'm going to tell all these people so I can get in. He wanted to make sure that he was bringing other runners on the right path. If you continue to use that, because it's real easy to veer off the path that God lays forward. for us. It's our fleshly nature that salvation. There's got to be something a little bit more than just faith in Christ that we start to add to. That was the issue in Galatians 1. It's an issue still to this day that people are like, oh yeah, it's faith and no, it's not. It's not faith and it's simply just faith. And so if we go down to verse 15, this sums it up. As he's talking, you and I are both Jews by birth, not sinners like the Gentiles. So he's like letting the people know. He's like, hey, these Gentiles are sinners. They are not the Jewish people. But yet, we know that a person is made right with God by faith in Jesus Christ. So even though we are God's people by birth, you and I are Jews by birth, we are not like the sinner Gentiles. Pretty harsh language. And then he contrasts that phrase. I think that's the right word I want to use. Or he's revealing a new truth, so to speak. We know that a person is made right with God by faith in Jesus Christ and not by obeying the law. So it doesn't matter if you're now Jew or Gentile. A person, full stop, is made right with God by faith in Jesus Christ. And what does that made right mean? I want to read to you this. This is from Constable's notes on Galatians. Again, Dr. Constable guy. Free resource that you can get from, I don't know where, soniclight.com. But I just type in Constable's notes and then whatever book I'm studying to kind of get some insight. Check this out. When a person trusts Christ, God identifies him or her with Christ, not only in the present and future, but also in the past. The believer did what Christ did. When Christ died, the believer died. When Christ arose from the grave, the believer arose to newness of life. My old self-centered life died when I died with Christ. His spirit-directed life began in me when I arose with Christ. Therefore, in this sense, the Christian's life is really the life of Christ. Christ lives in me. Remember that. That being in Christ, the hardest thing is probably the past. That you can get so caught up in your past life. But be encouraged that when God sees you as right with Christ, he doesn't see you. He sees Christ for your past. He sees Christ for your present. He sees Christ for your future. Be encouraged by that. Enjoy that today. If you're struggling with that, just keep that in your memory. I'm Matt with So Cincy. If you're here on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple later on, appreciate you. Follow the show. And again, we'll see you tomorrow at 6:30 a.m. right here. As always, love you guys. Have a great one, and we will see you later. Bye.